Student Destinations presents Achieving Wealth. You don't have to be a millionaire to be wealthy. So today we'll be looking at John. John just landed an entry-level career that's relevant to his post-secondary studies. Within the industry he works, he has a starting wage salary of $45,000 per year, which equals to about $2,800 net per month. It took him about 4 years to land the career, and he currently lives in Toronto. Living in the city, he's currently renting at $800 per month, and he has some consumer debt totaling $25,000, and with $4,700 on top for student loans. John is currently age 28. So some of the purchases throughout John's 20s that has led to his consumer debt. Purchased a nice bicycle, got a kayak, traveled on credit, which is actually quite dangerous. He has an interest in photography and bought the top-of-the-line camera gear. As well, he has ski and snowboard gear for the wintertime. So let's look at his balance sheet. John has started some savings. He has a TFSA account for his down payment, and he has his RSPs for his retirement savings, as well as savings accounts for just emergencies or anything that he may want to partake in. Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough assets that outweigh his consumer debt, leaving him with a net worth loss of $16,368. Now managing a budget with his new job, he has $2,800 net after tax. He currently rents, as mentioned, $800 with a debt repayment plan of $991 total, leaving about $26, which could go into savings, but it probably handles all his miscellaneous unbudgeted items, such as bank fees and anything else. This would be an ideal budget allocation breakdown, being that half of your take-home pay should go to your everyday necessities, food, shelter, and clothing being the majority, and transportation to get you to and from work. As well, you have 30% for wants and desires. This is for your lifestyle costs, being some for savings for your annual vacation, entertainment, and purchasing of electronics or whatever vice you may have. Finally, 20% should go to your long-term savings, even short-term savings, including your debt repayment. So let's see how John has done. Unfortunately, because he has about 84% in fixed expenses, John's budget is vulnerable to any unforeseen one-off expenses, being that he may have a medical bill that's outside his group benefits or any repairs that need to be done in his house that isn't covered by his landlord. So looking at his budgetary line items within the pieces of the pie chart, John also has some goals. He'd like to be debt-free by 30. As well, what would help with the rest of his goals is to be promoted to management, where he figured he'd have an increase of income of 33%. Part of maintaining a healthy lifestyle, healthy work and lifestyle balance, he'd like to have his 3 weeks off every year and be able to purchase a home in 5 years' time. Some obstacles that will prevent him from reaching his goals. John would actually need to work above and beyond the 9 to 5, potentially, if he wants to move up to management. Being that it's an entry-level job and positions being limited for entry-level professionals, it is probably the norm that he will probably be working outside more than his 8-hour day. As well, he currently doesn't contribute enough to be debt-free by 30. If he wants to be management, there may actually be a requirement by his employer that he would need more education, being through certificates or designations. As well, his employer only pays 2 weeks of vacation, and he currently doesn't have enough to have a down payment. Some opportunities though, because he lives near his work, he could bike or walk to work and anywhere else he needs to go. He can also negotiate a lower interest rate on his credit, much like anyone else. Fortunately for John, his employer has a management training program. As well, from all the long hours he'll be working, he could negotiate getting an extra week of vacation from his banked hours. And because right now it's only John, he could buy a smaller home and rent whichever spare rooms he'd like. Here's some risks that John may be exposed to that he may or may not know. He may have to put up with the job market's being in favor for the employers, so there might be some compromises along the way. As mentioned, having to work the late hours. Being that there is 84% of his budget going to unforeseen expenses, he is vulnerable to one-off expenditures, being that he may have to add to his consumer credit if he can't afford these unforeseen costs. As well, because of the place that he works, competition is very high, so there's only limited seats that will be moving up to management. And because he has an entry-level job, he may not be able to have the time off that he'd like to for vacation. And based on his personal balance sheet, he definitely doesn't have the credibility to achieve a mortgage. And lenders would probably look unfavorably on his current financial situation. So what can John do today? This would probably be not a wise idea, being that he just started the job. He could allocate his entertainment in the unlikelihood of winning the lottery. That might be even more difficult than winning the lottery. Because he just started the job, finding a new job would be very unfavorable because it would not look well on his resume that he's already trying to find a new job. Going back to school will only increase his consumer debt. Cutting expenses, we could look at the budget to see what could be saved. Increase income, that's always a good idea, but because he can't ask for a raise, we're going to have to see what else can be done. So let's look at cutting expenses. Okay. So again, looking at his budget, there are a few line items that could be challenged. He may or may not need to buy the Metro Pass, but in the event that he actually needs to use public transportation, his transportation costs could go up for not having the savings of purchasing a monthly pass. He may just live without having internet or cable in the house, but that probably wouldn't be favorable for John. Everybody needs to have an allocation for discretionary spending, but because he doesn't have an emergency account, this also serves as handling his unforeseen variable expenses. And because he's already started because he's been contributing to RSPs on a monthly basis, it's best to probably not touch this amount. And as mentioned earlier, we don't actually know if he has $26 at the end of the month to play with. So cutting expenses won't solve all of John's problems. Just to show the pie chart once again, that small piece of the pie would be handling anything that wasn't included on the budget, leaving 16%. In the event that an unforeseen expenditure occurs, he probably will have to use consumer credit or just not have any discretionary spending within that month. Okay, so increase income. Because he can't ask for a raise, we'll look at his balance sheet. He can't really control the rate of return on investments, but he does have some assets he could sell. But again, it's not enough to wipe out his debt. How do you feel about selling your camera gear? What about renting it out? Well, you mentioned you're good at photography. Are you any good? Like professional? Why don't we start a side business for you? Okay, so let's quickly put a business plan for John. John can leverage social media to introduce his services and utilize the free apps that can help him create a website. All he needs is something simple with his name, his services, the cost of service, and his contact information. It'd be wise for John to go out and network with event planners and wedding planners just to see how he can pick up a few gigs per month. As well, any camera equipment he doesn't have, he can always rent from an AV company or borrow from friends. Some challenges. It's bad enough that he's potentially working longer hours with his employer. He definitely will be putting his social life on hold with his freelance job. Additional costs may occur from this freelance job if he wants to incorporate or have to purchase any other equipment up front. Because of doing the freelance job, he may not have any time up front to do the training program. As well, if there is any time for vacation, it would probably only be just going away for long weekends. And because he wants to pay off his debt, his savings plan for a down payment will have to be on hold until he's debt-free. So looking at debt-free, we mentioned earlier he's 6 years into his 8-year plan to pay off his student loans. Fair enough. However, it's going to take 5 years to pay off his other debt. John currently has a $20,000 line of credit maxed out with a near $5,000 balance on his credit card. John would need to put an extra $599 a month into his consumer credit in order to be debt-free by 30. Therefore, with this freelance job, he would need to make an extra $600 net after tax, which he figures is going to be 2 to 3 shoots per month. So let's assume John was successful and did what he needed to do. Now let's look where he is at 30. So he's continued to contribute the $75 total per month into his TFSAs and RSPs. But the great success was him being able to pay off his consumer debt over 2 years' time. John has seen an increase of over $30,000 over a 2-year period, where he would be able to look at some new opportunities. And here they are. Being that he doesn't have a line of credit or a credit card balance anymore, he has an extra $991 to play with. He also did receive a raise of 15% from his employer, and now he has enough clients to subcontract shoots and hire an employee to handle gigs he doesn't want to do and have more personal time. He's gained seniority to take longer vacation time, so he is able to potentially get 3 weeks vacation. As well, he has more disposable income for a down payment. With a net change of $30,000 in his net worth, this looks very favorable to lenders. So let's look at his new monthly budget. Being that he has $3,400 to play with, he has made an increase to his down payment accounts in his TFSAs, and he's also allocated a little more to his entertainment. Now he'll be able to afford his vacation without going on credit. As well, because of just where he's been aware of where the job markets have been, he's started an emergency account. So let's see how his new budget allocation looks. This looks a lot more balanced, which will safeguard him from one-off expenses that could derail his monthly finances. So now 3 years have gone by. John was able to put away $40,000 into his TFSA. As well, he no longer has any debt and has seen over a 5-year period of an increase in his net worth of $76,000. Now that he's been able to shop around, he was able to find a home 2 blocks away from where he rents, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo for $255,000. After closing costs, he's going to be financing a $245,000 mortgage over 25 years. Looking at his new budget, his business has grown to $1,000 a month, where he's able to hire a few people and choose which jobs he'd like to do. As well, he's found a tenant for the 2nd bedroom. His mortgage is now $2,000 a month, which includes the maintenance costs. The mortgage itself is actually just over $1,300, with the monthly maintenance cost of $730 per month. As well, he needs to be aware of his annual property tax and insurance, which is about $435 per month. And now he has an amount that he can allocate to other opportunities. Being that he's really concerned that now he's financing a mortgage, 61% of his income is going towards the everyday needs. The savings account that will be allocated to his emergency account would be needed. So some of that savings, the other opportunities would be going to putting money away for a rainy day. And as well, being very tight with his finances on the discretionary spending that he's not going to be utilizing or using his credit card. So let's look at his goals. Because of his freelance job, he's been able to maintain a healthy work-lifestyle balance, which led him to be debt-free by 30. Although he wasn't promoted to management, he did see some increase in income that helped him reach his goals. As well, he was eventually able to travel 3 weeks every year, which also was the great purchase that he was able to get his first home in 5 years. So now moving up to being financially independent. John will be spending the next 25 years paying down his mortgage, but he has some savings or liquid cash that he can be allocating to other opportunities, although it'd be best not to touch his RSPs. Such things that he could use his RSPs for without getting hit with a tax bill is to utilize the lifelong learning plan where he can pay for higher education. So looking back at his budget, There's only been a few changes, but what John should really be focusing on, the ultimate goal, is to be able to pay bills without employment income. This can be done by numerous matters, but let's just see. Let's fast forward 5 years, and what could he do? So John he's invested his time at his employer, so he does have job security, but he does want to utilize some of his personal time to help increase his wealth. He could start another passion project on his spare time, or he could just invest more money into a side business, spending more money on advertising and trying to gain more clients. If John likes his employer, he could buy shares, but he should speak with a financial professional before doing so. As well, he could consider moving to somewhere with a lower cost of living, but he would run the risk of not being able to find an employer that will pay the amount he's making now. As well, because he'll have some equity in his home, he could rent out both rooms. That should cover the majority of the home financing, and take the equity in and buy a second home. So John has some choices that he can make. But for you watching this video right now, here's some tips from student destinations and achieving wealth. You can keep a balanced budget. Always keep a balanced budget. Just remember the 50-30-20. It may not be feasible to do it from day one, so just take baby steps to get there. Try not to use consumer credit to purchase disposable goods, and use it only for purchasing cash-generating assets. Always reassess your employment professional opportunities periodically. Ideally, you would want to be looking at your resume on an annual basis to see what is out there for potential gains. Always try to live within your means to ensure you become wealthy sooner. When you start using consumer credit, you find that you'll be strangling your your personal balance sheet. So try to keep a balanced budget and not spend outside of what you can actually afford. Speak with a professional, find out how to use home ownership as an investment opportunity. If you are fine with looking at rental income, try to figure out what the tax implication will be for renting out rooms in your home. As well, be proactive in acquiring assets that will provide steady cash flow to cover your living expenses. If you're not aware of what opportunities are out there, ask around. You'll be surprised at what you may find out. Thank you for spending the time to watch this video, and we hope that you learned something.